Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for bearing with us while we give people a bit more time to tune in. As I said earlier, my name is Benjamin Nolan. I am the Advocacy Officer at Choice for Youth and Sexuality, and today I will be hosting the webinar of the Unite for CSE project, which is a project that was executed together by Choice for Youth and by YouAct. I won't give too much of an introduction to the project, just because a lot of people who've been working very hard on this project for a long time will give a better explanation in just a few minutes. But I just wanted to give everyone a warm welcome and say hello, and that we're very happy to have you here attend the webinar today. It's an exciting time today to be talking about comprehensive sexuality education, particularly in light of the upcoming European elections, where we could all imagine that this might be a pressing issue, and also because it's the 1-year anniversary of the recent UNFPA technical guidance. Today, I will walk you through the agenda briefly of what we're going to discuss and how you can participate in the webinar as well. Explain you just a couple of the proceedings of how people can participate today, and then finally leave the rest of the evening to the fantastic team who've been working on this project for months. So after I give the opening remarks, some of the team members are going to give the background of the project. So what have these two organizations been working on for the last 2 months? Then afterwards, we will talk to you and give a summary about the other youth that we've been speaking throughout this project, and what the key things are they want to address in their sexual and reproductive health and rights. Later on, we will talk about our discussions that we had at the European Parliament and what the key takeaways are from that time that we spent there. And we will also have the main outcomes of the project, which will be presented. And finally, we will have a question and answer time for you. So as you might see in the right corner of your screen, there is a chat box. Feel free at any point in time to drop us a question there, which I will write down and make sure we address at the end of the session. Or otherwise, feel free to intervene when we get to the Q&A in about 35 minutes. So please do ask us any questions in the meantime, and we'll make sure to address them at the end of the Q&A. For now, I'm very much looking forward to hand over to Meerte and Anna Maria, who will give you a bit more background on this project that we've been working on together, and looking forward to the rest of the evening. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. This is Anna Maria. I hope you can hear me well. So I am the chair of YouAct, and I have been coordinating YouAct's involvement in this project. But I would like to also talk a bit about another project that we implemented also with Choice. This project is actually the continuation of the first phase. So last year we worked on CSE, of course, again, and we implemented a project that started with a desk research. So we looked in 5 countries in Europe at what is the situation regarding sexuality education and what are the needs of young people. And based on that research, we met and we mapped what can be some key activity to do at national level. So then with the help of our national partners, or partners from the 5 countries, we did some advocacy at national level, and the activities varied from meetings with volunteers to roundtables. And then the third part of the project was a social media campaign, and as part of that campaign, we also developed some infographics. So we developed 1 infographic per country. Each infographic tackled CSE and actually found an argument to why comprehensive sexuality education is important in that national context. They were all made in English and in the national language. So we disseminated them, and of course, we also had a webinar to share the lessons learned at the end. This is, in a nutshell, what we did in the first project. And now with the second project, we try to move forward. But I will give the floor to Meerte to discuss more about what we did in this project this year, last year. Thank you.
Yeah, so my name is Meerte. I'm a youth advocate at Choice for Youth and Sexuality. So the second phase, it's the second phase of the project, a collaboration between YouAct and Choice for Youth and Sexuality to improve comprehensive sexuality education throughout Europe. We started this phase of the project in August 2018. We started with the weekend where we drafted the timeline for, amongst others, a social media campaign, and also for attendance of the global education meeting and the Eurongos, which is the European conference on sexual and reproductive health and rights. So we came together in that weekend to draft a timeline, and we also decided that we wanted to meet with European Parliament members. So we created an idea for that. One main activity of this project's phase was that we held youth consultations. So we held youth consultations in Romania, Georgia, the Netherlands, Bulgaria, and Macedonia, which we will hear more about later. And in these consultations, we asked young people about their experiences and the challenges that they faced regarding CSE in their countries. And the idea was that with these consultations, we would draft key messages for teachers, parents, and members of European Parliament that we could deliver to these members of European Parliament in specific about the situation of CSE in those countries. These key messages will all be compiled into an infographic, which is still in process at the moment. Another main activity that we did with this project was the actual meetings with the members of European Parliament in Brussels. So a few members from CHOICE and YouAct went to the, first in November, we went to the Eurongos, so the European Conference on SRHR. And we held a youth-led pre-conference with the goal of finding out what the European youth experiences were or struggles were that young people face with regard to CSE. And in addition to that meeting, we went to Brussels and we met with 4 MEPs. We discussed with them what we could do to make their work more valuable on CSE, or what they could do for us, maybe, within the European Parliament. And these meetings went actually very well. And we had 5 more meetings in December with other members of European Parliament. So we reached out to all members of European Parliament, but we had meetings with 9, which was quite good. During this meeting, we mentioned the key messages that we got from the youth consultations, and we also discussed that we would share the infographic with the members of Parliament that were interested. And they would also share our social media activity. And regarding social media, we have been very active around this project as well. We had our own hashtag, Unite for CSE. And this webinar is also one of the main activities, actually. So I'll give the floor back to Benjamin now.
Thanks, Meerte, for that overview of the project. So if I sum it up correctly, I think the summary is that we engaged with young people in dialogues to see what their key issues are in their sexual and reproductive health and rights in the national context. And the aim of the project was to take that research into evidence-based advocacy towards the European Union and their Parliament members, as well as through an online research campaign. So thanks for that introduction, Meerte and Anna Maria. And now I'd like to give the floor to Anuki, who will talk to you a bit more broadly about the youth consultations that were held. And then we will delve into these youth consultations and their key outcomes in the next segment as well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ben, and thanks for everyone joining this webinar today. So as we mentioned, we had 5 youth consultations in the focus countries, and those focus countries were Georgia, Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Netherlands, and as well as Romania. And as the title itself says, it's evidence-based advocacy campaign, right? That's why we needed to hear from young people and to hear from them what are the challenges that young people face in these countries, and to base all our advocacy actions and also the messages on these youth consultations. And I would like to thank all the partners who helped us to organize these focus groups. And now on the webinar, we have Victoria from Bulgaria, from YPeer Foundation. And Victoria has been facilitating the youth consultation in Bulgaria. And we have also Anna from Georgia, from Georgian Youth Development and Education Association, GDA. GDA has been a project partner in the first phase and the second phase project. That means that the local partners are also supporting this idea and engaging themselves in this efforts together. And also I would like to mention that all this input that we have received from this youth consultation are really invaluable, because we based all our messages, main messages that we deliver to the MEPs on the reports that we have received from youth consultation. That's why I thank you again so much for this. And I would like to give the floor to Laura, who was in charge of Macedonia, communication with Macedonia, and Laura will tell more about the main findings from Macedonia.
Thank you, Anuki. My name is Laura, and I'm a youth advocate for YouAct, and I was in charge of managing the youth consultation in Macedonia. In Macedonia, the youth consultation was held by our partner Hera. They unfortunately cannot make it to be on this call, so I got the honor to communicate the outcomes of their youth consultations. They met with 10 young people and brainstormed about messages, what they want to communicate to the 4 different stakeholders which we picked. These are other youth, teachers, parents, and finally the MEPs. The main topic in all of their messages was that CSE was important for their future, which they envision as informed adults, responsible, informed enough to make their own decisions, that they are free from sexual violence and harassment, in a safe space where awkward questions do not exist. And their main messages to parents were, if you feel awkward talking about sexuality education to your kids, you should fight for CSE, because educators will do it for you and more, and your kids will grow up into, well, informed adults. CSE is important to make your children aware about their health and rights. For teachers, the main message was, imagine an environment where every student will know the consequences of unprotected sex, will not be a victim of sexual harassment, and all that is possible by bringing CSE into formal education. To other youth and to parents, it was, school won't be that boring if we have CSE, where there's no such thing as asking awkward questions, and they will all be answered. And finally, to the MEPs, which I think is maybe the most important one, is the quality of life in your countries will drastically improve if young people are aware about their rights and health. This can only happen through CSE and peer education. And now I give the floor to Ben, who is going to talk about the Netherlands.
Thank you for that overview, Laura. So I indeed was responsible for the youth consultation that was held in the Netherlands, where we brought together about 15 young people between the ages of 17 and 30 from a diverse geographical range in the Netherlands to talk about CSE and SRHR in the Netherlands. It was interesting to see what kind of issues people came up with. But I think one of the key messages that stemmed through the entire consultation is that people remember their sexuality education mostly as talking about illnesses and diseases and preventing unwanted pregnancies. But what youth were asking for, and what they think is a lot more important, is to not only talk about these more difficult issues in terms of sex and kind of talking about it from a very sex negative view, but rather to also have sex positive discussions, to be able to talk about pleasure and about casual sexual relationships, different sexual partners, and to have sex not only as a bad thing, but also as a good thing, that is something that people can enjoy if they want to. Also, something that the youth mentioned is that while in the Netherlands there is increasing attention for lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgendered people, so sexual and gender diversity, the gender diversity part of it is still something that youth don't know a lot about. And that while we get told more about sexual orientations at school, that gender diversity and expression is something that students want to learn more about, so they can understand their peers that might have different gender expressions than they would do. In addition, youth talked about abortion, saying that it was something that was rarely, if at all, addressed in schools, and that this is something that they think is really important. And lastly, youth said it's very important at school to be able to talk about consent, so that one knows how to engage in responsible relationships with their peers, and that this is not part of the Dutch curriculum, and that they would like to see this included. Those were the key issues that were addressed in the Dutch consultation. And next, I'd like to hand over to those responsible for the Romanian consultation.
Hi, thanks, Ben. It's me again. So I was in contact with Romanian local partner who helped us with the youth consultation. And they had 20 high school students in the meeting with the average of 16 years old. And they discussed a bit about the stakeholders and what are their opinions, and then also developed, of course, the key messages that they see as most vital. I think what's important to highlight from the beginning is that there was a lot of emphasis on the concept of sexuality and how this is understood. When it comes to parents, for example, young people feel that, you know, it's 2018 and nothing should be taboo anymore, but actually I think there is a high generational gap, and parents don't necessarily see that way. And also on the fact that parents fail to see the importance of sexuality education in prevention. And yeah, framing it, I'm seeing the benefits of sexuality education. The messages that they would like to send to other young people is that sexuality education has a focus, has an impact on the future of young people, and that yeah, the price basically is too high to ignore it, to ignore the risks that of course can and that young people take when they don't know anything about sexuality. Regarding the decision makers at European level, I think the main message was to focus more on keeping the countries accountable and yeah, monitoring that they do what they say. And regarding schools, they would like to see a lot more communications or effective communication. I think generally between teachers and students and among students as well. Yeah, I think that's it for Romania. And now I will hand it over to Victoria from Bulgaria.
Hi everyone, I hope you can hear me. So I'm Victoria, I'm an EVS volunteer in my peer Petri Sofia, and I was responsible for facilitating the youth consultation in Sofia. So basically we had 13 young people who were high school students, and also there was one school counselor who was participating in this youth consultation. So one of the key findings were that the main associations that young people had while they were talking about sexual and reproductive health and rights, they were mostly related to risks, dangers, and disease, such as like negative aspects as well as contraceptives. However, like other aspects of CSE were briefly mentioned, such as pleasure or maybe other aspects of CSE. Also, another topic that was widely discussed was the condom use and accessibility, so that condoms should be promoted more through campaigns, commercials, and other types of media visibility. They mentioned that parents and friends' influence is considered very important when it comes to ASRHR, and also mutual support and sharing between the children and parents was considered to be a very, very important matter in this aspect. Also, when talking about the topics which are part of CSE, they mostly focus on violence and different aspects of violence, and while recognizing different types of violence, and they thought that this is an important matter that has to be discussed in the schools. They mentioned the role of the schools in providing sexuality education, and also they gave some examples how they envision this to be. For example, having presentations, discussions, participation of teachers, older students, and parents. And they also mentioned that CSE has to be provided in and out of school through different types of non-formal activities like outdoor events, festivals, and other types of events in order to provide information. Also, some of the key messages, I would briefly mention that they want to have sexuality education in and out of school, like discussions and presentations and non-formal activities. Also to have more structured way of providing CSE, because right now the information was not structured and not well organized and not comprehensive. And also to involve parents, peers, and teachers in the process of providing CSE. To have space where they can talk more openly without being embarrassed and afraid to ask and share about different topics which are part of CSE. Also to have better accessibility to condoms and including free condoms, for example, in the pharmacies and other places. And generally that there should be measures to prevent and respond to violence, including bullying at school. And also they mentioned that some of the laws have to be changed in order to protect better the victims of violence, and also sanction the perpetrators in a more efficient way. And maybe the last recommendation was to have a normalization of the topics related to ASRHR, and also higher media representation. So to have these topics available on the billboards, commercials, and more media visibility. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll hand over to Anuki for the final section on Georgia.
Thank you so much. Well, why those youth consultations are interesting? Because we can see how different is the situation in those countries, but also what kind of similarities we have between these countries, right? And in Georgia, the situation can be the most dramatic out of these 5 countries, because comprehensive sexuality education in Georgia is basically non-existent. We have some topics included in the biology curriculum, but of course it's not comprehensive. And then we have another challenges which are related to teachers who are not qualified enough, feel embarrassed to deliver all those topics. Usually they skip the chapters in the in biology books, and they give kids as a home reading, and then kids also, they don't read, and so on. And one of the challenges are also related to increasing resistance coming from very conservative and religious parts of Georgia. And we have witnessed some of the protests in the streets, having other topics included either in biology curriculum or to incorporate another subject in the formal education system. But yes, there is huge resistance coming from the conservative sides. And this is, of course, related to all the stereotypes and taboo that are widely spread in Georgia regarding sexual and reproductive health and rights in general. Then the participants who took part in the youth consultation talked about privacy and personal space, which was kind of surprising for us. They talked about privacy not only in these institutions, and they referred also to youth-friendly services as well, and youth-friendly environment in general, but as well as personal space in their homes, because most of them mentioned that usually Georgian families, they stick together, and parents are too much into their lives, and that's a problem for them. So that highlights the fact that we also need to work with young people, but also with their families and parents, and we should be together in this process. And then we had another main finding during the youth consultation, that can be highlighted is related to early marriages and lack of family planning knowledge in general, and huge stigma around contraception, using contraception, and also high rates of STIs and HIV/AIDS in general. And of course, the main problem is that we don't get quality education about these topics. That's the main problem. And then key recommendations were related to access to CSC. It should be ensured for everyone, everywhere. Decision makers should have as a priority to provide comprehensive sexuality education for young people, but unfortunately it's not the priority at all. Biology should not be the only subject that provides information towards these topics, but also there should be another subjects or curriculums created in the formal education settings. And also government should recognize young people as one of the top priorities, and to fulfill what they undertook by the policies that are basically left only on the papers, but there are no concrete actions and concrete follow-ups regarding CSC and sexual and reproductive health and rights in Georgia. That was the main findings and the highlights from youth consultation. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuki, for that concluding messaging. And also, I think you said it so well indeed that it's interesting to see how across these different countries in Europe, there are some key issues which are so unified across all of these different spaces, and that youth are so eagerly to have included in their education policies. So I think that's a very important takeaway from the consultations that were held indeed. For the next section, we're going to talk about what we did with this data. So the project was really about evidence-based advocacy, and the youth consultations were part of generating that evidence base. But then later we wanted to take this evidence and the research that was conducted and bring it to the European Parliament and try and see if the data and the information that we had on the interests and needs of young people could influence policymakers at the European Union level to advocate for change. So I'm happy to hand over to our team that was responsible for the Brussels visits, who will tell you a bit more about the meetings we had at the European Parliament.
Thank you, Ben. I'll start with, well, a brief introduction of why we chose to go to the European Parliament, because basically, as everyone knows, EP is one of the most powerful institutions legislatively as well as budget-wise, and the decisions that the members of the European Parliament make affects our everyday lives. And the MEPs steer the discussions, and they can steer the discussions either way. So we as citizens decided to bring those messages from the young citizens and to try to influence basically their policies and see who would be interested to listen and who would be interested to support us in our messages to mainstream comprehensive sexuality education. And what we found was that actually when we contacted the MEPs, a lot of them were quite interested to meet us and to listen. And that was very encouraging because they listened to our messages and they decided to support us with tips, with sharing resources. And by resources, I mean just like contacts of other decision makers or other MEPs who would also like to meet us. And they also gave us some other advocacy platforms. Some of them retweeted us. All of that was very encouraging and an interesting experience. And also the support of the assistants of the MEPs was also very valuable because they took the time from their quite busy schedule to actually have conversations with us. But of course, we had some challenges, and one of the challenges I'd like to highlight is that they give us so many resources that we had some difficulty to follow up on every single one of them. And we see the necessity to actually follow up because we are on the verge of elections. And because of our low capacity, because of the second phase of this project is coming to an end now, it was quite difficult to see that. But despite that, I feel that our team has done an amazing job, and it has actually been quite like one of the most successful projects that YouAct and CHOICE has collaborated on. And also one other thing that Georgia is actually not part of the EU yet, but we are a member of Council of Europe. So we found that our advocacy efforts had an indirect effect on Georgia as well. So that was very, very encouraging. Yeah, that's all from my side.
Hi, here I am again. I was part of the team that went to Brussels in December, and I would like to share 4 points with you as well. I will start with the most interesting thing. I think that what I thought was most interesting or got me by surprise, that members of the European Parliament are just humans as we are too. So they were generally interested in what we youth wish, dream, or envision for our future. And all MEPs had one thing in common, and was the fact that they were inspired by meeting us, and that our enthusiasm about the topic worked contagious. So we really had inspiring conversations with them, and we had no need to be nervous for these conversations because they were actually really great. There are also some lessons learned for the next time. It might be smart to also meet MEPs that are not that much in favor of CSE or that are neutral about sexuality education, because for now we only met with MEPs that were really on our side. And well, we already have them on our side. So they also said that MPs that are neutral or against sexuality education or were quite controversial were already getting sick and tired of the MEPs in favor of it. So they thought that when they might hear it from youth advocates, they could change their mind. So we might want to think of these issues next time as well, to really focus more on people where we can win visions or perspectives. That was also one of the challenges, because we really had some good conversations, but yeah, most MEPs suggested to reach out to MEPs that were opposing our stance on CSE, and like Sophie told, we do not have that much capacity, or and the project was coming to an end, so the really influencing part could have been better, I feel. And the most unexpected thing was how much time some of the MEPs and their assistants took to inform us on what they are working on, how we could support their work, and how open and insightful they were, for example, about votings on budget lines that had to do with sexuality education, and tips and tricks to further lobby inside of the European Parliament. They were really open. There were no restriction in that regard. So that was really great. And now I think the other members want to share some of their experience as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I can go next. It's been a very good experience. Actually, it was my first time visiting Brussels, meeting with MEPs, such high-level decision makers. So we have here some tips that can help you to maybe plan for your advocacy campaigns. So the challenges, sometimes we had even 4 or 5 meetings per day, and it's quite tight timeline, right? So it was kind of challenging to stay fresh and motivated to meet with MEPs and to deliver your messages. But what helped us was the team, which was not, some people, they were not physically in Brussels, or they were not physically meeting with the MEPs, but they were helping from outside. We mean like calling with MEPs, rescheduling sometimes meetings, and so on. So plan it well beforehand and have the team that supports from outside, let's say. So this is one of the tips that we can give you. Lessons learned: to be more open for the conversations with decision makers, and in this case, MEPs. They do listen young people, and they are very, very much inspired by us, and therefore we should be more precise and to clearly say what we want and what are our messages. Yeah, they shared many interesting resources with us, contacts and inspiration, and they were pretty much eager to get inspired from us, very open and supportive. And they considered as their allies, which is very interesting fact. The most unexpected thing, how friendly and welcoming they are, as well as their assistants. And I would agree with Laura. She said that assistants are engaged in all of the processes of their work, like basically daily works. And one of the tips can be that to contact with assistants and to consider, maybe take their factor into account while you're planning your advocacy actions. Assistants, they decide a lot. They have big influence on what MEPs will agree or not. So yeah, that's it from my side.
Hey, me again. So from my side, I think lesson learned is indeed, like Anuki already said as well, this kind of advocacy demands a lot of preparation, energy, and capacity. So if we were to do something like this again, or you would decide to do something like this, 4 advocates present, physically present in Brussels, is the minimum I would suggest. Yeah, because it takes a lot of energy. It's inspiring, but it also is draining a little bit. So for me, the most interesting thing that I learned was actually that we still have a very conservative European Parliament. Maybe it's because I come from the Netherlands, but I was a bit shocked because despite all the amazing work that the MEPs that we were talking about are doing, they also told us that they are only with a few of them who are very willing to talk about sex education and SRHR, and they are also expecting with the next European Parliament that it will be even more conservative with regards to gender and SRHR. So I think I found it interesting, but it's also one of the main challenges, I think. Another challenge would be, like the others already mentioned, so the ones that are on our side are very, very willing to talk with us, but the ones who are not on our side and that we want to have on our side remain quiet. So they are unwilling to meet or haven't responded. So maybe a campaign that directs the attention to them would be interesting or smart. So one of the most unexpected things that I found was that we received so many concrete things from the MEPs that we could actually follow up on. Turns out that they do have a lot that we could actually work on and that we could get involved in, and they are very open to it as well. So the only problem on our side is then time, money, and capacity. So challenges. But yeah, it was interesting to see how open they are for cooperation with the civil society. So now we'll give the floor back to Ben.
Thank you for giving us that overview of the experiences you had in Brussels. As I've said before, I'm welcoming any questions from the audience in the chat or the Q&A function on the Zoom app. I already see some incoming things through the chat, so thanks already to those who've contributed and for sharing some insights also from your local context. I've prepared just 2 short questions to kickstart the Q&A, but also I'm looking to see that already one question has come in from the audience, and we'll see if any 2 more come in while we answer the first sections. So Sophie, actually my first question is addressed to you, if that's okay. I think if we listen to all of the panelists that went to Brussels, I think a lot of the sounds that you're giving are very positive about how welcoming the members of your the EU have been towards your presence. But I was also wondering, were there any experiences that you had that were perhaps more challenging, maybe in light of your age, if people took you seriously when they spoke to you? Is there any things that you thought were more difficult as a young person speaking at the EU?
Thank you. That is a very good question, actually. I think it was the opposite because the assistants were also young people. So I think the MPs are more open to active young people in the sort of in the field of activism, because of a lot of assistants were also activists working on gender-based violence and SRHR, gender equality, all of that. But I would say not for our age, but rather we had some challenges for the topics that we were advocating for. So sexuality education in itself. And it was interesting. It was, of course, an interesting experience. You have to be prepared that not everyone would be as I don't know, as open to the subject or as willing to listen to the evidence, basically. So that was one of the challenges. But I think our power was in our numbers, and if one of us sort of like forgot a message, the other one would immediately tune in and help us out, and that was something that was really encouraging, and we still managed to turn it into a positive experience, I feel like.
Thanks for sharing that insight, really appreciate it. My other question was for Anouk. I was wondering if, now that you've been to the European Parliament and have kind of tried to gain access to this space, do you think there are structural changes that need to take place at the European level to try and make these spaces more accessible to youth?
Well, if I can add to the previous questions, one of the tips can be to explore about as much as information as you can about MEPs to find the entry points. As Sophie mentioned, I mean, some of the topics were kind of delicate to talk about with certain MEPs, so it's better to explore beforehand, do some research, and to find the key entry points. Where the supportive teams plays a big role, because sometimes, like, we've been receiving messages from our teammates, you know, don't talk about maybe abortion, start with something else, and then we will see how it goes. So, well, about this, your question, Ben, I think actually we sent like around 600 emails, right, to get the answers, and we received answers maybe from 20 MEPs, and finally we met around 9-10. That means that usually they don't pay that much attention to those kind of messages. That's why if European Parliament would create some kind of platform where all these meetings can be scheduled easily, this is just like, you know, brainstorming and a quick idea, would be great, because to reach out MEPs, it's kind of challenging. Also, I felt that in general they were friendly, but I would not say that it's kind of youth friendly. If it was your question, sorry if I misunderstood, but yeah, that can be one of the ideas, and we can advocate together for that.
Thank you for that. Sanna, I'm happy to hand over to you next to present the concrete outcomes of this project and the online presence that we've had before we address the questions from the audience. Thank you.
Yes, so for this project, we launched a very active social media campaign, as mentioned before. Going into this, we sat together and we really determined what do we want to get out of all these meetings, what kind of message do we want to portray, and also what kind of results do we want to have. And obviously, it's been great that we had these interactions with MEPs, but it's important for us also moving forward to still spread the messages that we got from the young people in the different countries and still spread this out. So it's not, the project has not ended with this webinar, it's still ongoing, and we're currently preparing some information packs to spread out to parliamentarians. And other than that, throughout the last few months, we've been very, very active on social media. In fact, we're planning to launch our last vlog, which will be then the last of 5 vlogs. And that will detail a summary of what it's been like meeting the MEPs, having these youth consultations, and actually getting the word out there that comprehensive sexuality education is really important. So that's happening still. In the meantime, we have also been sharing the infographics, which have already been shared with you. And in fact, the interest in that was was really great, because I just checked on the CHOICE Facebook page and I noticed that almost all of them had more than 1,000, have reached more than 1,000 people. So that was really encouraging to see that there has been some interest in this. And other than that, what we're doing is we're still planning to give attention to the work that we have been doing now, not only with MEPs, but also with whoever is interested in comprehensive sexuality education, so that's also young people, or other organizations, and building on the lessons learned. We think it's important also for other people to know that this is a pressing issue and that we need more backing of this. I think personally that given what we've learned, that now these elections that will be between the 23rd of May and the 26th of May will be really important, and there are a lot of people that will sit on different seats, and it's important that also moving forward we can also keep this pressure on for comprehensive sexuality education. So this is definitely not our final activity, so please follow us as we also present our infographic about the key messages, which is also going to be coming out, and some other things. What else can I say about this? I think with us, it was a very strong collaboration between YouAct and between CHOICE. And I think for whoever is planning to do something similar, to reach out to us, and we'd also be happy to provide some insights there. So that is it from my end.
Thanks so much for giving us the overview of the online presence also from the project. I think at this point we're going to take the questions that have come in from the audience. I'm going to start with a question from our colleague in Bhutan, I think, who says that he's a member of the organization called YPeer, which is also a youth-led advocacy network on sexual and reproductive health and rights. He says that in his local context, when he talks about sex and sex education in schools, he says that often he's been seen as a promoter of sex and that this is a negative thing in his context. And he's asking if any of the panelists have any tips on how you might overcome such negative associations if you do comprehensive sexuality education advocacy. So I don't know if any of our panelists is ready to jump in on this question, but please feel free to do so.
Yeah, maybe I can, well, of course, anyone can add their opinion. Everyone is a human, right? Like in Bhutan, in Brussels, everywhere. And what I mentioned just before, we should find entry points, right? The correct corner where we can start. So maybe not to talk about sex directly, but find the issue that is challenging for everyone else in the country, in the society, wherever you are working, right? I don't know, with the parents, start talking with, not about maybe sex, but about health, and then swiftly change the topic to the point that we want to advocate for. So my tip would be to find the entry point, and the thing that is important for most of the people in this particular society.
Okay, thanks so much for sharing. And I think also reading the comments from a colleague from Bhutan who says, maybe it's easier if we bring in healthcare experts and doctors who can also contribute to some of these discussions. And I think that's such an important point to see how we can bring all of the different actors in this space together to talk about this issue. I'm just looking at the rest of the panelists to see if anyone had anything to add. In the meantime, also looking at the comment section to see if there are any final questions before I hand over to my colleague for the concluding remarks. I think if there's no one who's jumping in at this point, maybe I have one last question for, yeah, actually for all of the panelists. I mean, maybe one or two of you can jump in. What is the one thing that you'd like people to take away from this panel, from this discussion that we've had here through all of the work that you've done? What is the one thing that people should remember?
So if anyone wants to cut in, let me know. But for me, especially the openness with which we were received by members of European Parliament, it just showed me that if young people actually want to get involved, they are very open to it. And I think in other spaces this will count as well. But it has to come from us. We have to take the first step. They will not come to us to invite us to come to talk to them. So if you want to make a change there at European level, you have to do the work. You have to, get yourself invited in that sense. So yeah, I think that's what we learned with this project, that once we do the work and make sure that we show that we're passionate and motivated, then yeah, they're very open to it. That's what I wanted to share.
Maybe it sounds pathetic, but stronger together we are stronger, right? So collaboration, partnerships, this project proved that especially partnership between youth-led organization really works well. So thank you for that.
And with that, I think I'm happy to hand over to our colleague Anna Maria, who will provide the concluding thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. So as we can see, this has been an intense, complex and ambitious project. We want to thank ShareNet for supporting us financially for this phase and the first phase of the project. And I would also like to highlight some of the strengths of the project. And of course, we discussed about many lessons learned, but maybe three main things. One of them would be the fact that we took it from national level and we went to regional level. And I think, of course, this was only possible with support from our local partners. And we thank them as well for their involvement. I think very important as well, it was that we built on, on a previous project and previous outcomes of the project. And it's challenging, to make use of all these outcomes that we have from various projects. But I think it's also very important to not leave it there and to make as much use as we can of the things that we have already. And also the fact, maybe another third strength was that we took the similar issues that we saw and we really pushed them forward in meetings with the MEPs, on social media. So really try to spread the word basically. And I hope we made our contribution to advancing comprehensive sexuality education. It's only another step. We will take the lessons learned from this project, and I hope you are also learning something from this, and of course you are inspired. So I think that's it. If anybody else wants to add something before we close. If not, I just want to encourage you all to stay in touch and to reach out to us on Facebook and other social media channels.
If I can just tap into that, feel free to hashtag us at Unite for CSE, Unite CSE, and also for Advanced Sex Ed. So if you're going to tweet or if you're going to engage on Facebook or Instagram, we're happy to see your messages come by.
Thanks so much for everyone for tuning in from all across the globe, and then nice to speak to you today.
Bye.
And thanks to the panel. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.